And I saw a finger appear, and it pointed to the second week of October, and it dragged the finger through the third week of the month. So it covered second and third week of October. And then it pointed October 31st, and it held the position. It just kind of tapped it and held it. I saw federally elected officials, faces I recognize. I saw specific state governors. I saw agency leaders. And I saw just radicals, like the people you'd see in Portland or Seattle or Minneapolis. But they had wicks coming out of their head, almost like a firecracker wick, like a firework wick. And the second week of October is when I saw simultaneously all those wicks coming out of their heads were lit on fire. Federal officials had heads that were the shape of like an old M80. Those folks from the 70s and 80s remember those. The governors had heads shaped like the Black Cat firecrackers, the 1.5, 2-inch firecrackers. Everybody else had the smaller, like ladyfinger style firecracker fireworks. And these people are talking, and they're starting to get animated. They're yelling, they're screaming. The facial images went from normal and calm to red face, jumping to an absolute out of your mind primal scream. Everybody's head blew up at the same time. These people were still alive, but their heads had blown up. And this resulted in sparks and debris flying all over the area where they were standing, and it started fires around them. And then I saw the protests that were taking place, that were still taking place in October. They went up another notch because the bystanders who were part of the protests and that were there, that were not being very, very violent and not really getting us involved, the protesters basically said, if you're not doing that, you're not one of us. And they began to assault those protesters who were not deemed as violent or as vicious as they should be. And I saw some of those protesters left on the side of the road, almost like they were dead. They'd been beaten because they weren't protesting like the other ones were. They were an attack on older Americans, the people that hold the Constitution dear, the flag dear, the people that have the common sense values, commitment to faith and biblical principles. I even saw people trying to get into nursing homes and nursing facilities to attack older people. That I saw in the dream. And then I saw a $100 bill, a big $100 bill about the size of a flag. It was hanging like a flag on a pole. And it was burning from one corner. And it was being lowered, like at the end of the day. And I saw people with their hands over their hearts, and they were crying because their god of money was just being lowered. It had lost its value. And it burned until there was about a third of it left. It was a celebration. People were celebrating. While some Americans were just devastated and torn up by what they saw happening, there were people celebrating that the dollar had died. It was dying. The value of the American dollar. There was someone even playing taps in the background. And then I saw churches, small groups of people kneeling and praying. They were wrestling in prayer with the spirit of the age. But these people were protected by bubbles of safety. There were angels guarding around them. And these were the faithful core of the church that had not been compromised in their values and their faith. They were being encouraged to stand strong. They were being encouraged to keep preaching, praying, believing. Just like the ones I saw in the September dream, there was just relentless attacks against them. But they stayed faithful. They were in the heat of the battle. They were praying. They were fighting. They were wrestling. Like I said, with the spirit of the age, but they were fighting to stay faithful. And they were very few in numbers, but that didn't bother them. And I saw behind each of these people praying, I saw a small gate. And I was reminded of Matthew 7, 13 and 14. Enter by the narrow gate. Enter by the small road. And they spoke like their words, as they spoke, their words were like they were slurred, like they were drunk. And suddenly their clothes were coming off. Their tie was loosened and taken off. Their shirt was taken off. Pretty soon they were standing there completely naked. And I saw this rug pulled out from underneath them, and they go flying up in the air. They're trying to cover their modesty while they're up in the air. But as they were floating in the air, I saw money flying out. I saw money flying out from them. All the money that they'd gotten from all the prophecies and ministries and things they'd done selfishly. I saw that money just kind of flying. But when they landed on the ground, this is another thing that just really got me. When they landed on the ground, all of them that landed on the ground that were all puffed up bit through their tongues as they landed. And pieces of those tongues went flying. And they were trying to reach out to grab them, but they were beyond their reach. I was reminded of the story of the Emperor's New Clothes. They were exposed. Venues. And the signs said, elections so many days away, weeks away. But these clowns were dancing and acting like clowns. They were juggling. And there were people trying to get to vote, but they were slipping. They were sliding past the doors, and they couldn't get in to vote. And the clowns were actually trying to distract these people from doing what they were supposed to do. And they were doing it in a professional way. They were juggling, but they were doing skits. But the skits were sinister, and they were abusive.
Live Dogfish Pony Show. My memory is not as good as. Am I doing this again?
Please clarify specifically. Have you taken a cognitive
No,
test?
I haven't taken the test. Why the hell would I take a test? Come on, man. That's like saying before you got in this program, you take a test where you're taking cocaine or not. What do you think, huh? Are you a junkie?
What do you say to President Trump, who brags about his test and makes your state an issue for voters?
The American public judge my physical and mental my physical as well as my mental fitness. Why? You're getting nervous, man.
Can you guys see the writing on the wall yet? Trump, Pence are sounding all over. The Trumpets are sounding.
And the clowns were actually trying to distract these people from doing what they were supposed to do. And they were doing it in a professional way. They were juggling, but they were doing skits. But the skits were sinister, and they were abusive. And they watched anybody approaching the ballot, not the ballot box, but approaching the venue, the building where they were going to vote. They looked at them with suspicion and angst. They were doing everything they could to keep people from voting. They were trying to distract them from what was going on. And the board. And it said, Passover 2021. Big things are coming for the world.
I also will choose their delusions and will bring their fears upon them. Because when I called, none did answer. When I spake, they did not hear, but they did evil before mine eyes, and chose that in which I delighted not. Hear the word of the Lord, ye that tremble at his word. Your brethren that hated you, that cast you out for my name's sake, said, Let the Lord be glorified. But he shall appear to your joy, and they shall be ashamed. A voice of noise from the city, a voice from the temple, a voice of the Lord that rendereth recompense to his enemies.